Modes of reproduction. There are basically two types of reproduction which we have to consider. One is asexual reproduction, one is sexual reproduction. Now, what do you mean by asexual reproduction? Now, asexual reproduction, as the word meaning, you can say when there are no two organisms involved, only one organism acts as a parent and it divides into various different types and it gives rise to new organism, and that type of reproduction is called as asexual reproduction. So it involves only one parent. So only one parent is involved. This is the major difference between asexual and sexual reproduction. Only one parent is involved in asexual reproduction. Secondly, they divide mitotically. Now, mitotically means by using the process of mitosis. This process is used in asexual reproduction. In mitosis, actually there is no crossing over of any two sexes. Here, only the cell division will take place for growth. Now, when the cell division takes place for growth, this type is known as mitosis. And we can say there in asexual reproduction, organisms divide mitotically. Then third major thing, they are genetically same to their parents. They are genetically similar to their parents. Now, when I say genetically similar to their parent, means there is no problem of variations coming. Here no variations come because there is no DNA copying. Here directly division is taking place due to the mitosis, and genetically they are similar to their parents. So these are the very important parts or important characteristic features of asexual reproduction. And one more we can say, there is no fusion of different cells. When I say only one parent is involved, obviously there are no two different cells coming and there is no crossing over, and therefore no fusion of different cells are involved. So in short, again, asexual reproduction deals with the only one parent which is going to divide mitotically, that means using the process of mitosis, and this, when mitosis divides, the offsprings or the new generation are genetically similar to their parent. And fourth, there is no fusion of any different type of cells in this asexual reproduction. Now, what can be the disadvantage? The lack of genetic variations. As I said, when there is no fusion, no variations come into picture. So the disadvantage of this asexual reproduction is, that means there is no variations possible in this type of mitotic division, that means mitosis. There is no variations possible. But what is the advantage? The advantage is this reproduction takes place very fast. That means within some minutes they can divide into two parts can divide into 4 parts. So not like the organisms which has to give birth to the young ones after so many months, or they have to lay eggs after so many months. So this is the advantage. Disadvantage is there is no variations. So I can write disadvantage no variations are seen. And second, the advantage is So advantage, it takes place very fast. We can say it is a rapid reproduction taking place. So if you are asked to write the characteristic features of asexual reproduction without mentioning the types of asexual reproduction, you have to mention these 4 characteristic features. Asexual reproduction is taking place in the organisms with only one parent involved, no 2 parents are involved. Then this parent divide into 2 or 4 using the process of mitosis, that means it divide mitotically. Third, the genetically they are very similar to their parents, similar genes have come, there is no variations. Therefore, and because there are no variations, why? Because there is no fusion of different cells. Another disadvantage of this is no variations are seen, as the fusion is not possible in this case. So if there is no fusion, no variations means no different type of organisms. And advantage is rapid reproduction takes place in this type of asexual reproduction. But if the question comes, define mitosis, how will you define mitosis? So first you will say mitosis is a process where rapid cell division takes place, and rapid cell division is taking place before the growth and the development of that organism. So rapid cell division for taking place for growth and development is called as mitosis, and this takes place in somatic cells. The somatic cells means the cells which are not germ cells, which are not involved in the sexual behavior, and therefore they are known as the somatic cells. How it can be represented diametrically, I will show you. So in mitosis, now suppose one organism, parent cell, when one parent cell is involved, it has 2n number of chromosomes. Okay, so what happens? It divides into 2. So when it divides into 2, both get 2n and 2n, and these are called as daughter cells. In mitosis, one parent cell is involved having 2n number of chromosomes, and they divide giving both the organisms 2n number of chromosomes, and therefore these are called as daughter cells. I can say one parent divides into 2. This 1 again divides into 2, so it goes on dividing into 2, and it restores the original chromosome number. This, if you want to show diagrammatically the mitosis and in words the definition, you will say mitosis is a process of rapid cell division for growth and development. It takes place only in the somatic cells. And how will you show? One parent cell is involved with 2n number of chromosomes. It gives both the organisms 2n number of chromosomes, and then these 2 are called as 2 daughter cells, which actually restores the original chromosome number. No chromosome number changes. What is the difference here? In the sexual reproduction, one set of chromosomes comes from mother, one set of chromosomes comes from father. And here, since there is only involvement of one parent, so this divides. Now suppose this is a cell, it divides completely into 2. And this 2n number of chromosomes is given to this daughter cell also and this daughter cell also, and therefore it is only involved with the cell division, which is happening very fast. And this type of cell division, which for the growth and development, is called as mitosis. Now there is a question on page 148 in blue box. Name some animals and plants that reproduce asexually. Now since we are learning the asexual reproduction, we want to know some examples of asexual reproduction. Asexual reproduction is seen in, you can say examples, in amoeba, then in paramecium, then in yeast, in parasites. So these are the examples of asexual reproduction in animals. The question was, name some organisms or name some animals that reproduce asexually. So these are some examples we can say, and one more example we can, I just remembered, euglena. Here are the examples where asexual type of reproduction takes place. Now here asexual are of different type. It can break into two, or it can grow, multiply and then break into two. So there are various types. Some grow outgrowth, that is called as budding. Some show binary fission, some show multiple fission, some show fragmentation. All these are various types of asexual reproduction. Now what are the plants in which this asexual reproduction is seen? Now you can say the plants may be algae, fungi, ferns. So you can write down the examples of plants which show asexual reproduction. Algae, fungi, ferns. So these are some of the names of plants which show reproduction due to asexual reproduction. I can say Spirogyra. So these are the examples of animals and plants which shows asexual reproduction. Now activity 12.3 on page 148. Now there you have been asked to see a permanent slide of amoeba. What is amoeba? Amoeba is a very small organism, microscopic organism. Microscopic, when I say, it is so small that I cannot see with my naked eye. So this is generally found in the water bodies, where near the ponds, near the lake. If you collect the pond water and you try to see that pond water sample under the microscope, you may see some organisms which are having no shape. So the amoeba is a type of organism which doesn't have shape. It changes its shape, goes on changing its shape, and that's why it is called as irregular shape. The amoeba does not have any shape. Here, if you see this amoeba, what type of reproduction is seen in amoeba? We are going to learn that amoeba shows binary fission. When I say bi, that means two. In two halves, fission means break. So binary fission is seen in amoeba, where amoeba divides into two, and this is called as binary fission. Now how it divides, we are going to see in detail. Now in the question, second one is, in this stagnant bacteria rich environment, paramecium often multiply, forming a ring just below the water surface. Now here they are taking the name of paramecium, which is another microscopic organism. Another microscopic organism. Microscopic means, again, we cannot see with the naked eye. If I take a sample of water, I will not be able to see in that amoeba floating or paramecium floating. They are so small. So it can be only observed under the microscope. So we are going to see next, what are the modes of asexual reproduction used by unicellular organism. Unicellular, uni means one. The organism having one cell, that means their body is only made up of one cell. So we are going to find out what type of modes of reproduction they are following in unicellular organism. So I can say modes of asexual reproduction seen in unicellular organism. Now we can say there are actually three major type of modes which we are going to see, modes of asexual reproduction seen in unicellular. Now first we are talking about unicellular organisms, that is the cell which is only one cell having the whole organism, and organism is having only one cell. So first is actually binary fission. Second type we can say is multiple fission. Third type is budding. There are three major modes of asexual reproduction which we generally see in unicellular organisms. Now, what is binary fission? We were discussing about amoeba. What is amoeba now? Best example to understand my binary fission is amoeba. Amoeba is an organism which is a unicellular organism, is found in the water bodies having an irregular shape. Now when I say irregular shape, I can make any shape of the organism. This type, if I say take this shape and this is the nucleus. So what happens? How this amoeba is going to divide? Now his amoeba is a unicellular organism which can divide by first the nucleus starts dividing. Now if I say next step will be, if I draw anything, this nucleus will start dividing like this. Here the nucleus was full circular. Now the nucleus slowly and slowly starts dividing. That means a constriction is coming in the nucleus. And this constriction next we can show. So here this is one part of the nucleus going, and here the second part of the nucleus is going. So this is going to divide now, and the fourth stage we can show is it is going to form two daughter nuclei. So these are the various stages of binary fission in amoeba. Now amoeba is showing the binary fission, that means the fission is breaking. Binary means two. So this amoeba, if I consider it first, here the nucleus starts dividing and separating. When the next stage, the nucleus will go into the two different parts of amoeba, and finally there will be a breakage and showing the two daughter cells. So first we will discuss the binary fission which happens in amoeba. Now since amoeba has a irregular shape, it can happen in any plane. The binary fission or the breaking into two parts can happen in any plane. It's called a simple binary fission. There is no exact plane through which it has to cut, no transverse or longitudinal. It can happen in any plane. Let's make the diagram and see. Amoeba has an irregular shape. So let us this be a parent cell. Now this parent cell, in this parent cell, what is going to happen? This nucleus is going to start dividing. So you can say nucleus starts dividing. Then next stage, here the cytoplasm will start dividing. What is cytoplasm? The part which is surrounding the nucleus here is called as cytoplasm. So let's see how it is divided. So this is how it will start dividing, and the nucleus will also almost get divided like this. And the fourth stage, it will form two types of daughter cells, one with this. So here you can say cytoplasm starts dividing, and these are the daughter cells which are formed. So this is how the binary fission takes place in amoeba. Now this amoeba is a very small, you can say prokaryotic type of organisms. This binary fission is seen in amoeba, binary fission is seen in other unicellular organisms also, and binary fission is seen in many of the prokaryotes and protozoa also. Now in amoeba it can happen in any plane, but if I talk about binary fission in paramecium, it will be transverse case. The transverse means the paramecium is a slipper shaped organism. This is the structure of paramecium. This is the structure of paramecium, and paramecium divides into from the transverse plane. Now there are planes. This is a transverse plane. This is the longitudinal plane. So when binary fission takes place in such type of paramecium organisms, it will cut through the center part. That means it is transverse plane where the binary fission is taking place. Again, in some stages it will start dividing, the nucleus starts dividing. When the nucleus starts dividing, and complete the dividing, the cytoplasm also divides and it separates into two. So here two will be formed. This is how in the transverse plane this paramecium is dividing. So we saw the binary fission in amoeba. It happens at any plane. But binary fission in paramecium, it happens in the transverse plane. That means it cuts into half from the center. But what happens in euglena? Now this is the structure of euglena. Euglena is having such type of structure with one whip-like tail, which is called as flagella, and one nucleus. Now here the binary fission will take place in the longitudinal plane. This is the longitudinal plane. It will cut like this. So one nucleus starts dividing into two, and this body also starts dividing. You can see the two flagella coming out. So when the longitudinal plane is taken for cutting off these euglena, it divides into two daughter cells. So this is how one type of binary fission, that means one type of asexual reproduction or one mode of asexual reproduction, can be done in different ways. Can be done in any plane, that means in the amoeba. It can be done in the transverse plane, that is in the paramecium, or it can be done in the longitudinal plane, that is in euglena. So these are the examples. The diagrams are given in your textbook. The diagrams are very important. In the board exam, they might ask you to show the diagrammatic representation of binary fission of euglena or paramecium or amoeba. So it has to be learned with the labeling part. Labeling is also given in your textbook, which is very, very important. Now this was about binary fission in amoeba. Now amoeba also shows a type of fission which is known as multiple fission. Now let's go to the second type, which is called as multiple fission. Second is multiple fission. Now what do you mean by multiple fission? You can see the difference between two words. Binary fission, when it divides into two. Multiple fission, that means it must be dividing into more. So multiple fission generally is seen in amoeba when there are too many unfavorable conditions. Under unfavorable conditions, that means there might be less of water, more of heat, or less of humidity, because amoeba needs water. So if it doesn't get a favorable condition, what might it might do? First, it will withdraw its pseudopodia. Now what is pseudopodia in amoeba? When I draw like this part which is coming out is actually a part which comes out to engulf food or to locomote or walk or move around. Now this pseudopodia is retracted inside. That means all the pseudopodia is taken inside. And then a cyst starts forming. That means the outer covering of the amoeba becomes hard, and that forms a cyst. This is all happening in unfavorable conditions. Pseudopodia retracts, first case. Secondly, it forms a cyst around it, a hard covering around it. Why it is happening? Because the cyst is protecting the inside amoeba. Now what is happening inside? Inside, this fission goes on. Fission means breakage, or breakage means it is continuously dividing. When the amoeba inside the cyst goes on dividing, number of amoebas are formed, and these number of amoebas stay inside the cyst part. Now this is, first this was the amoeba, correct? Now this amoeba pseudopodia is all taken inside, and it forms a round structure. Now around the round structure, a thick layer is formed which is known as cyst. Now this cyst is actually protecting the inside part of amoeba. Now what is happening inside the amoeba? Fission takes place. That means continuous fission or continuous cell division takes place. A number of amoeba will be formed inside. Continuous division takes place and number of amoeba is formed inside, and it is protected by the cyst which is already formed. Now when the favorable conditions come, that time the cyst opens or ruptures, and when cyst ruptures, you can say, I can show this in this way, when the cyst ruptures, the amoeba comes out. It is released into the environment, and this type of fission happening inside the cyst is called as multiple fission. Multiple means number of different the same type of cells are formed, same type of amoeba are formed, but they are not released. They are not at a time, they are not only forming two, but at a time they are forming too many. And that's why this type of fission, which is called as multiple fission, involves formation of new cells inside the cyst, which is protecting them in the unfavorable conditions. When the favorable conditions come, the cyst opens up, ruptures, and all the cells come out. And that's why then it continues to divide further as binary fission. This is how the multiple fission takes place in amoeba. Now third type of mode of reproduction is called as budding. The very good example which we see, now if I ask you to take a spoonful of yeast, dry powder yeast is available. Now in baking industry or in alcohol industry or in the hotel industry, to make any fermentation process faster, they make use of this yeast. Now why do they make use of yeast? Simple, to make an idli batter. What to do? At home we generally don't use yeast, but in hotel industry where they need the idli batter to be ready in 2 hours time, then what they do? They add 1 spoonful of yeast to it. Now yeast is stored in the form of a powder, it is available in the market. Now if I put yeast in idli batter, or I take a sugar solution and put yeast in it, after few hours you are going to see the large amount of carbon dioxide being formed, and that because it is acting on the food in the idli batter, there is large amount of carbohydrates present, that means in the form of rice and dal. That rice is acting as a food for yeast. Yeast divides. Now when I say yeast divides, what happens? Now yeast is the best example to show the mode of reproduction that is called as budding. Now if I say yeast is we just consider yeast as a circular part of this small cell. Now this small cell will elongate like this, and this nucleus also will elongate along with this. This is how it goes on developing. Then slowly on this, a new type of bud comes out, and this bud starts separating, and finally you will see the original one and the bud also, which is separated. This is how you may see various chains of buds forming, and this is called as budding. Here nothing happens, no breakage happens. The nucleus starts dividing. Then when this nucleus starts dividing, one part of the nucleus goes in the new bud. The bud means outgrowth. Any outgrowth or the new growth taking place from the cell, this is called as actually the bud. And this bud give rise to another bud. This give rise to another bud. So many types of buds can be formed from the yeast cell. And best example you can say is yeast. And this is how budding is a process which is seen in yeast, which is one of the mode of asexual reproduction. Now what is happening in asexual reproduction? I can say this is the parent cell. Here the nucleus is dividing. When the nucleus divides, the one of the nucleus enters into the outgrowth that is called as bud, and this is how the buds keep on forming, and this is called as budding process. Activity 12.6 on page 149. Just pay attention to that activity. First is arrange the plants and animals in ascending order with respect to their structural complexity. What do you mean by structural complexity? What is a simple organism and what is a complex organism? I can say I am a very complex organism, or I am a very complex animal, but this yeast or amoeba is a very simple organism. You understood? Now, amoeba is a very small unicellular organism, and I am a multicellular organism. I have so many systems working under me or inside me, but there is only one cell here, and that one cell will have all the systems whatever needed in them. So simple to complex. The less number of cells, the less number of systems. The more number of cells, the more number of systems, and more complexity. So here some plant names are given: bacteria, sunflower, fungus, funaria, spirogyra. Now out of this, the most primitive or the most simple body is of bacteria. So the number 1 will come as bacteria. Then second, spirogyra. It's also a very thin microorganism, and why I am saying very microscopic organism, because I cannot see it with the naked eye, and that is why its body is not complex. It is very simple. It looks like a pipe-like structure, which we are going to do next. So second is spirogyra. Then third is fungus. Fungus, what are fungus? They are the organisms which grow on the dead and decaying organisms. So best example is mushroom, which you people know and you have seen, and many people eat also. So fungus, example mushroom, which is the third in the series. Then fourth, funaria. Funaria are the ferns. Now fern is a decorative plant which you must be seeing in the garden. It doesn't have flowers, but it has a leaf which have the black dots on their lower part, and that is a funaria. And fifth is a sunflower. It's a regular complex plant which is growing. So the increasing order is bacteria, then spirogyra, then fungus, then funaria, and then finally sunflower. So you can mark it in this increasing order. Find out the increasing order or the ascending order in animals. What are the animals given? Frog, amoeba, planaria, human being, and hydra. Now most complex is human being, so that will come last obviously. First is amoeba. Amoeba is a very small unicellular organism with a very simple body. So first is amoeba. Second, you can say hydra. Hydra is also a very simple organism which is found in water. It is also microscopic. We cannot see with our eyes. So the complexity is very, very less. And that's why the second number will be hydra. Third number, planaria. Planaria is an organism just so small. Its body is also very, very simple body. And third number comes as planaria. Fourth is frog. Obviously, frog is bigger than the planaria, which we can see. It's a multicellular organism which can almost jump around, live in the water, live on the land. And this is next series, which is frog. And finally, it is human beings, which is the most complex organism on this earth. So what is the ascending order in animals? First is amoeba, then second is hydra, third is planaria, fourth is frog, fifth is human beings. So you can just give the order system in the ascending order. Now, why do all these unicellular organisms show simple modes of asexual reproduction? They are quite simple, just dividing into two in any plane, or bud growing, or multiple fission. Because in unicellular organisms, all systems are being done in one cell. So complexity is less. They do not have to coordinate with each other. They do not have to depend on each other. Each one is doing their work inside one cell only. But as the multicellular organisms are there, number of cells increase, number of systems also increase. When we talk about this hydra, planaria, spirogyra, though they might be multicellular, but their complexity is more than the unicellular organism. So what is happening? If we, in multicellular organism, if they divide by like this, they will take hundreds of years to reproduce. Imagine a human being getting divided by binary fission. That means one cell divided into two, other cell again divided into two. How much time it will take to make a new organism? It is not possible in a complex organism, and therefore they show various complex ways of reproduction. The reproduction is not as simple in unicellular organism when compared to multicellular organism. The complexity of reproduction increases with the complexity in the structure of the organism. The more higher the complex structure, more is difficult is the mode of reproduction. It is not as easy as it looks in unicellular organism. Now we'll see the asexual reproduction in multicellular organisms. Till now we saw the asexual reproduction in an organism which is made up of only one cell. So it was very easy. It was budding, then multiple fission, and then binary fission. So it was only in the unicellular organism. But now the complexity is increasing. Multicellular organism means the organisms which are having number of cells in their body. So when the number of cells increase, obviously the complexity of reproduction increases. So what are the various ways of asexual reproduction in multicellular organism? Now we are still talking about asexual reproduction. So there are some of the ways I'll just mention. First is fragmentation. Now fragmentation is basically seen in Spirogyra. Okay, then second we are going to see is regeneration. Now regeneration, actually we cannot call it as a asexual reproduction, but in some animals when the parts get broken, they can grow into a new part. So if we are considering it as one of the method of asexual reproduction. Example you can say is planaria. Then third which we are going to see is budding. Now budding is repeated here. Budding was seen in yeast. Budding here in multicellular organism is also seen in one of the common example is Hydra. Fourth, vegetative propagation. Which is seen in plants. Now we are going to discuss which plants, which part of the plants where we are going to see the vegetative propagation. And fifth, which we are going to see is spore formation. These are the 5 major types of asexual reproduction which we see in multicellular organisms. Multicellular organisms, again I am repeating, it is made up of more than one cell. Number of cells together forms this organism. And so if the number of cells have increased, the complexity of the reproduction also increases. It's not so easy to reproduce a new individual. It needs lot amount of various type of things which are going into the breaking down or the budding part or the vegetative propagation or fragmentation. These are the various types of asexual reproduction. First is fragmentation, second is regeneration, third is budding, fourth is vegetative propagation, fifth is spore formation. So we are going to see one by one what it is about. As I said, fragmentation. What does fragmentation means? This is a verb this is a word which is in the noun form here. Fragments. Fragments means pieces. When an organism has in their body small pieces attached to each other, that pieces break off and grow into a new organism, that is called as fragmentation. The example is seen in Spirogyra. I'll just make a diagram and show you what is Spirogyra. This is how a Spirogyra looks. This goes on. Here every cell will have a nucleus, and spirogyra you can make out some band like structure like this. These are the bands of chlorophyll. Spirogyra is green in color. That means it is a plant which is actually growing in the water. We cannot see with our eyes, but we can see in the microscope, and it is having chlorophyll. So chlorophyll, these are the bands of chlorophyll on the spirogyra. These are the nucleus, and here it is all cytoplasm. Now, when the spirogyra has enough maturity to break down or to convert into fragments or pieces, that time it is ready for reproduction. Here the reproduction, how does it take place? Now you can see I have made some blocks like this. These are called fragments, and these separate. These fragments separate from each other during reproduction, and that is why this type of reproduction is called as fragmentation, dividing into fragments. And this fragment, this one particular fragment will grow in size and form a new spirogyra. This will form a new spirogyra. This part will form a new spirogyra. That means each fragment, each part of the fragment of spirogyra will change into a new spirogyra. This is how the fragmentation of a spirogyra takes place. This will take place when the conditions are correct and when it attains the maturity level. It doesn't mean that any time the fragmentation is taking place. Fragmentation will take place only when the maturity level is coming and the right temperature, right pressure, right amount of conditions necessary are available, and then spirogyra undergoes this fragmentation and changes into fragments. Next part is regeneration. Now regeneration, as I said, actually it's not a type of reproduction. It is considered under reproduction. Why it is considered? Regeneration. Re means again, generate means to make again. It's not a reproduction. Now what happens many times, if you have seen a lizard inside your house, and if by chance its tail gets cut, then what will happen? Will it move without a tail? You know what? The tail part which was cut is separate and the body part is separate. The body part, from where the tail is not there, it starts growing the new tail because it has some specialized cells in it. When specialized cells come to know that this part is cut due to some reason, it starts generating again, and therefore a new tail will be formed in few weeks. This is called as regeneration. Now regeneration happens in planaria. I just gave you the example of house lizard which we see in around us in our homes. Now planaria, it sometimes something looks like it, like this. Okay, this is a small animal which is living in the water, which you can't see so clearly. It is a very, very small animal. Many times due to some reasons, it may get cut from here or it may get cut from here. If it gets cut from here, this part, this upper part is separate, this middle part will be separate, and tail part will be separate. What will happen? This upper part, like this, if I say it is like this only, left, it starts generating the body because there are some specialized cells present in the planaria. Those specialized cells start making new cells by simple cell division, and this part gets the new body. Now this, what about this part? This part starts making the head and this and the tail, and the tail part will start making the rest of the body. So this is possible only because some specialized cells are present in each organism which are responsible for regenerating of this type of cells. So regeneration is possible in many of the organisms if by chance or because of some reason it gets cut and their body parts get cut, so it grows into the new body part. It's not a reproduction, it's a regeneration. Next, we are going to see what happens in Hydra. Hydra is another plant, we can say animal which is living in water, and Hydra undergoes the cell division, or you can say the reproduction, in the form of budding. Now again, if you remember what is bud, in the yeast cells an outgrowth came out, or one type of new type of cell came out from the original one. Same way in Hydra also, I'll show you with the diagram what happens in Hydra. If this is the Hydra stalk, here such type of Hydra have finger like structures. Okay, now this is the structure of Hydra. When the Hydra starts maturing, now this is a parent Hydra. So when it starts maturing, you may see some type of outgrowth like this. That means the outgrowth which is being made, or the new growth which is coming out, is called as bud. Now slowly this bud starts growing, and when this bud starts growing, you can see it can start growing and it may form a new type of organism which is still attached to it, and after some time when it gains maturity, it breaks. When it breaks, this new bud starts forming a full-fledged Hydra animal, and this is how the budding takes place in Hydra. Now what is happening here? Here the body cavity, the digestive cavity of Hydra, and this also gets shifted to the new bud, and they also get the cavity and the digestive cavity in it. When I say cavity, they do not have a system of digestion. They have only the hollow space in between, which is actually digesting all the type of food which they eat. Now what is happening? A type of hollow structure is made for this new bud also, and this is how the cavity or the digestive cavity is made for new bud. When maturity comes, when favorable conditions come, this Hydra bud gets separated from its parent, and this is how the reproduction or by means of budding takes place in Hydra. So we were talking about asexual reproduction. First we talked about Spirogyra, then we talked about regeneration in planaria, then budding in Hydra. Now we come to plants. As I said before, any part of the plant can grow into a new plant. Now there are many type of instances, examples. Now suppose if I take a hibiscus plant, that is the red color flower, that if I take a branch, just break it and put that branch in the soil, you will see after 2-3 days, 4 days, it gets fixed. Then it starts getting the new types of plants or new types of leaves on it. This is possible by a stem. I take a root. What happens if I take any root also? Let's take an example of sweet potato. So what is sweet potato? Sweet potato looks like a red colored potato which is long. That sweet potato actually is a root. Now this root, if I take it and plant it, it will start growing with a new stem and the branches. Now suppose I take potato, normal potato, batata. So if you have seen a potato, you will see there are some marks, white marks over the potato. Those white marks are called as small buds or eyes of the potato. Now why are they called eyes? Because from that eyes the new plant is going to come. It's also called bud because from that bud it is possible the new plant starts growing. You can do this example at home. You can experiment at home. Take a potato and small potato which has the eyes of buds on it. That means that marks are there. Put that potato in the soil in your own garden. Water it. After few days you will see the part of the potato which has buds, the new leaf has started coming out. So this is possible through a root also. The potato is actually a stem, underground stem, That means underground stem can also turn into a plant. If you have seen some flowers, flowers growing on the side of the leaf. Now there are some special type of leaves. Most common example is bryophyllum. Bryophyllum is a leaf which have buds on the sides of the leaf. It looks like flowers. It doesn't look like bud. And that, if you pluck it and put that leaf in the soil, I'll see after some days the new plant is growing. What I am trying to tell you? I am trying to tell you that each part of the plant has the capability of generating a new plant, and that type of propagation or the reproduction where plant parts are used or various parts of the plant are used, that is called as vegetative propagation. Vegetative propagation can be done through roots, stems and leaves. All parts of the plant have the capability of generating a new plant from their own kind. So root, which example we can say is sweet potato. This is root which looks like a potato. It is red in color, it is underground and it is very thick, full of food. We are using it as food. It's Marathi, it is called as ratad. So this root is sweet potato. If I take this sweet potato, cut into pieces, one of the piece also if I put in soil, it will start growing into a new plant. So this is the capability of that plant. Plants can grow from stems. I gave you the example of potato, which is the underground part. Potatoes have buds or eyes on it, and if you take a piece of potato with one bud on it and keep it inside the soil, water it for some days, you will see that some green plants have started coming, leaves have started coming out from that. The leaves example is bryophyllum. This bryophyllum is an example of leaf. Thus this leaf, if I draw and show, this leaf has small buds on their apex like this. And if I take even one piece of this leaf and put it in the soil, I'll see the plant growing from this bud. So this most common example is bryophyllum. These are the examples which are generally seen. These examples are the best examples to understand the vegetative propagation possible in plants. Now if I tell you that any branch or any stem also is possible, it's very possible. Seeds, from the seeds the new plant is coming out, but that will be not called as vegetative propagation. Vegetative propagation, special word it is used because here the body parts of the plant can grow into a new plant. That is why it is called as vegetative propagation. Now vegetative propagation, when they grow, obviously this new plant which is growing from the bryophyllum will look like its own original parent plant. So there is no difference because they are growing from their own parts. There is no difference, no variations. Here the vegetative propagation is possible from the various parts of the plant. The next type of asexual reproduction seen in multicellular organism is spore formation. Now I'll give you an example of daily life. If you leave chapati or if you leave bread outside in the moist air, nowadays a lot of moisture is present during the rainy season. Now if I leave bread outside, after 2 days, what will you see on the bread? Does it remain fresh? It doesn't remain fresh. You can see some brown patches or green patches over it. Now from where these patches have come? These patches have come because the spore formation has been taken place. Now what is spore formation? Spore formation is seen in fungus. Now the fungus is growing on the bread or the chapati. The fungus consists of some parts like spore which are growing into a new plant. So what is spore formation? I'll show you with a diagram. Now when we keep bread outside, it gets some patches of green colored or brown colored patches. These patches are actually the fungus. The fungus is considered as a microscopic organism. Fungus here, it is growing on a dead and decaying part. The bread is acting as a dead and decaying part because it is not fresh, it's not live. So the fungus starts growing on it. When the fungus starts growing on it, it makes such type of structures. Now this is called as, this ball is called as sporangium. Inside these dots which I am making is called as spore, and it has some root like structures which is called as rhizoids, and this is called as filament. This is the structure of bread mold. When I say bread mold, the fungus growing on bread is called as bread mold. So this mold is nothing but fungus. If I look at the fungus growing on the bread, see under the microscope, I'll see such structure. What is the structure basically? The structure is consisting of one small duct or ribbon-like structure which is called as filament. On the filament, ball-like structures are present which are called as sporangium. And this sporangium is filled with small particles of spores. Now this spore is actually the part which is going to grow into a new fungus. And this is the structure of bread mold. Now what is happening? When it attacks the bread, this sporangium starts maturing. When it starts maturing, a stage will come when it will burst open. When it bursts open, the spores come out. When the spores come out, they fall on the bread again. And when they fall on the bread again, each spore forms a new filament with a new sporangium. So imagine how fast this spreads. The reproduction here is so fast that one filament contains a ball of sporangium. This ball of sporangium contains millions of spores. When it attains a maturity level, it matures and it bursts open. When it bursts open, these spores come out. When these spores come out, it falls back on the bread. When it falls back on the bread, each spore develop into another sporangium with a filament. And this is how the bread mold continues to grow on the bread. This is a type of asexual reproduction where no two parents are involved, only one parent was involved, and these 5 types are the various types of modes in the multicellular organism. First was fragmentation, second was regeneration, third was budding, fourth was vegetative propagation, and fifth was spore formation. These are the various types which are seen in multicellular organism. And in unicellular organism, we saw binary fission, multiple fission, and budding. These were the 3 modes of asexual reproduction in unicellular organism, and these are the modes of reproduction in multicellular organism. Hello students, welcome back. We have studied in the last lesson about the asexual reproduction in plants and animals. Asexual reproduction like budding, like multiple fission, like binary fission. So all these types of asexual reproduction which we saw in plants and animals. Regeneration, then the budding in the yeast cells. So these were all the types where only one parent was involved. So one parent divided into 2 and then this is how the reproduction took place. Now we come to the major part of the reproduction, which is called as sexual reproduction. Now what is sexual reproduction? The reproduction which takes place when two parents are involved, one male and one female. That means one male cell and one female cell fuses to form one zygote, and that zygote develops into a new individual. Now this is called as sexual reproduction. The sexual reproduction involves two major things. First, it involves meiosis, the process of cell division which leads to the production of gametes. What are gametes? Gametes are the cells which are actually taking part in the fusion or the reproduction. So the meiosis is the process in which leads to the production of gametes. Now here the chromosome number is halved. The chromosome number, if it is 2n, it will be halved to n. This is called as meiosis. If you remember, we had done mitosis, which is part of the asexual reproduction. In mitosis, there were no halving of chromosomes, only the chromosomes number were divided into 2, keeping the exact number of chromosomes. But in meiosis, it leads to the production of gametes by producing haploid cells. Now what do you mean by haploid cells? Haploid cells are the cells which when we consider only one cell instead of two cells, or one cell having the chromosomes. We are not taking the pair of chromosomes here, we are taking only one chromosome. So meiosis involves the division or the reproduction of gametes which are haploid cells. Then once these haploid cells are formed, they undergo a process which is known as fertilization. Now what is fertilization? The fertilization involves the fusion of one male gamete and one female gamete, resulting in the formation of zygote. And this process of formation of zygote, which develops into a new individual, that is called as fertilization. So a process of sexual reproduction involves two things. One is meiosis and one is fertilization. Now when sexual reproduction takes place, and I am saying two gametes, one from male and one from female, fuses together, obviously the characteristics of male and the characteristics of female are going into the offspring. There are bound to be some variations. Now why the variations are coming? Because DNA is being copied in the offspring, and when DNA is copied, it is copied from the male and copied from the female. So there is some error always, and that error in the biological terms we call it variations. So sexual reproduction bring out the variations, and that is why you and me, though we are the species belonging to Homo sapiens, we look different because our parents are different, their characteristics are different, and the DNA copying also have some errors or variations. Is this variation useful to us? Yes, variations is very useful during the sexual reproduction. Now why it is useful? We can say variations bring out the variety of organisms. Different variety of organisms are possible only when sexual reproduction takes place and there are variation in it. Second, it brings out the diversity. Diversity means different types of organisms in this world are due to the variations. One, variety is different. Second, diversity is there. Third, when we have variations, a new human being or a new organism is formed, it is better they get adapted to the environment much faster. And when they get adapted to the environment, the survival rate increases. So this is the third benefit of variation. Fourth benefit, if there are variations, it prevents extinction of that species. This is very important. Variations help us to keep the species on this earth. It helps us not to get it extincted. So variations are very important. This question is very common in SSC board. What are the usefulness of variations, or what is the importance of variations? So in this such case, 4 points should be remembered. You can write variations bring out first variety. It gives us a variety of organisms on this earth. Second, it gives out the diverse type of organism, diversity. So various organisms of different kinds are seen because of variations. Third, they are able to adapt and survive. The organisms with various variations are able to adapt to the new environment, and therefore they can survive in the new environment. And the fourth, it prevents extinction. So variations bring about these four things which are important, and variations is possible only in the sexual reproduction. Very few asexual reproduction will show these variations, and that is why we don't see so many types of individuals or so many types of organisms where they are only reproducing due to asexual reproduction. So variations bring about these following things: a variety of organisms, a different types of organisms on this earth, better adaptability. When better adaptability to the environment, survival rate is more, and then it prevents the extinction of that species. So this is about the variations which bring out the various types of organisms. Then what is meiosis? How will you show meiosis? With the help of a diagram. So diagrammatically, meiosis can be shown in this way. Remember, in mitosis we showed how a parent cell divides 2n divides into 2n and 2n. That means they are exact copies of their parent. But here what is happening, the diploid cell is becoming the haploid. So if the parent cell 2n, that is, it is diploid cell. Diploid means having two chromosomes. So a pair of chromosomes or two chromosomes. This diploid structure will become haploid structure. So what will happen? Meiosis is taking place. That means reduction is taking place, and this forms one N and another N. These are called as haploid cells. This is what is happening in the meiosis. Now once these N cells are formed, then mitosis takes place. And mitosis gives out another N, gives out another N. So again here also mitosis takes place, gives out one N, gives out other N. So meiosis is the reduction in number of chromosomes. That means from diploid it becomes the haploid cells. 2N, that means the two chromosomes change into, divide into N and N, that are haploid cells. These N and N gets further divided by mitosis, and this N is called the gametes, which are present in male and female. So this is the process which can be shown diagrammatically using the meiosis, or this process is called as meiosis process. It's where is this meiosis taking place? Meiosis is taking place in the reproductive cells. It is only taking place in the reproductive cells. So meiosis takes place in the reproductive cells, and mitosis takes place in the somatic cells. If you remember, when we did the asexual reproduction, I told you about mitosis. Mitosis takes place in the somatic cells which are not involved with the reproduction in this way. So the meiosis takes place in the reproductive cells, mitosis takes place in the somatic cells. So this was about the sexual reproduction, which involves meiosis and fertilization. There is a activity 12.11 in your textbook, page 153, which you have to do it. Here we have to complete the table by showing the differences between asexual reproduction and sexual reproduction. Now first is the characteristics. The second is the asexual reproduction. Third is the sexual reproduction. Now here the characteristics are given in your textbook. One by one I will read out the characteristics. I will write only the asexual and the sexual blanks which are given. First is the number of parents involved. So number of parents involved. How many are involved in asexual reproduction? As I said, asexual reproduction involves only one parent. So you will write one. In sexual reproduction, two parents are involved. Second, types of cells involved. Types of cells involved. Now here in asexual reproduction, somatic cells. As I said, it involves somatic cells, and here it involves reproductive cells. This is the second difference, major difference. This is a very important question, that's why it's written on the board. Third is type of cell division. So type of cell division. As we saw here in asexual reproduction, mitosis takes place, which divides into 2n only. It doesn't change into haploid. And here meiosis. This is the difference between the type of cell division which takes place. Then nature of offspring. Now what do you mean by nature of offspring? The nature of offspring here, it is identical in the case of asexual reproduction, identical to the parents, but here there are not identical to the parents, there are variations. So you will write identical to parents and here it with variations. Next one, rate of reproduction. How fast is the reproduction done? Here rate of reproduction. Now here in the asexual reproduction it is quite rapid, and in asexual reproduction it is slow. But these are the major differences. And modes of reproduction. The mode of reproduction in asexual reproduction is single cell division into two. So mode of reproduction is single cell divides into two. But what happens in sexual reproduction? Here the two cells fuse to form zygote. Two cells, male and female, fuse to form zygote. So these are the major differences between asexual reproduction and sexual reproduction. Number one, number of parents involved. Here only one parent is involved. Here two parents are involved. Number two, types of cells involved. Here somatic cells are involved. Here reproductive cells are involved. Number three, type of cell division which is seen. Asexual reproduction, mitosis is seen, and sexual reproduction, meiosis is seen. The nature of offspring, how the offspring looks, it is identical to the parents in case of asexual reproduction, but you are different from your father, you are different from your mother. That means you are not identical, you are born with variations. Rate of reproduction is quite rapid, it is here, it is slow. And mode of reproduction, single cell divides into two, and here the two cells, that is male and female, fuses to form one zygote, and then it divides into a whole organism. This is the complete difference between asexual and sexual reproduction.